Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. Jack Wilson turned onto a familiar street, where rows of neat houses with manicured lawns lined the sidewalk. The suburbs of Portland, Oregon, were as quiet as a postcard, with maple trees dropping their first autumn leaves and the evening air smelling of dampness and pine needles. His gray Toyota Camry pulled to a gentle stop in front of a two-story house with white siding and blue shutters. The house he and Emma bought 10 years ago was their pride, cozy with a spacious kitchen and a backyard where they barbecued on weekends. Jack, a 42-year-old financial analyst, is used to this routine work, home, Emma. He turned off the engine and sat for a minute, looking at the warm light pouring from the living room windows. Emma was home, her red Honda Civic parked in the driveway. She usually met him at the door or at least shouted, "Hello," from the kitchen, but lately she has become quieter, more thoughtful. Jack frowned, remembering how last week she sat at dinner, buried in her phone, answering in monosyllables. He then chalked it up to fatigue. Her work at a marketing agency was often exhausting. But now, looking at their house, he felt a slight pang of anxiety. Something was wrong. Jack grabbed his leather briefcase and climbed out of the car. The cool October wind ran across his neck, making him shiver. He straightened his dark blue jacket and walked along the path to the front door, trying to push away his disturbing thoughts. Maybe she's just busy, he thought, opening the lock. "Emma, I'm home," he called, stepping into the hallway. The smell of roasted garlic and rosemary filled her nose as she cooked. This was a good sign. Jack took off his shoes, placed his briefcase on the coat rack, and hung up his jacket. From the kitchen came the hissing of a frying pan and Emma's quiet voice. She was humming something. He walked through the living room, where her laptop lay on the coffee table, open to a page with some graphs. Emma always left traces of her work everywhere: notepads with notes, pens, coffee mugs. Jack smiled when he noticed her usual cup with the words "Best Marketer" written on it. But the smile quickly faded when he remembered her distant look at breakfast. He decided not to remain silent. "Hey, this smells amazing," he said as he walked into the kitchen. Emma stood at the stove, stirring chicken in a frying pan. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she was wearing her favorite gray sweater with wide sleeves. She turned around, and Jack noticed that her smile was a little forced. "Hi," she replied, returning to cooking. "It's just chicken with herbs. Nothing special." Jack leaned against the kitchen island with his arms crossed. He looked at her, trying to understand what had changed. Her movements were just as confident, but some kind of shadow flashed in her eyes. He decided to start small. "How was your day?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "You said yesterday that you had a deadline for that project with the coffee shop." Emma nodded without looking up from the frying pan. "Yes, everything is fine. We passed the presentation. The client is satisfied, but there is always something to improve." She paused, then added, "How are you?" Jack shrugged. As usual. Analysis of reports, a couple of meetings. The boss wants me to take on a new project again, but I'm still thinking about it. He paused, hoping she would pick up the conversation, but Emma just nodded, transferring the chicken to a plate. Silence fell between them, and Jack felt his anxiety growing. Is everything okay?" he asked finally, deciding to be direct. "You've been I don't know, it's been distant lately." Emma froze, holding the spatula in her hand. She turned slowly, and her green eyes met his. For a second, Jack thought she wanted to say something, but then she looked away and smiled too quickly, too artificially. "It's okay, Jack. I'm just tired. Work. She turned to the sink, starting to wash the frying pan. "Let's have dinner, okay? I'm hungry." Jack looked at her back, feeling a lump in his chest. He had known Emma for 15 years, 10 of them married. He knew when she was lying. But instead of insisting, he decided to retreat. Maybe I'm exaggerating, he thought, although his intuition suggested the opposite. Okay, he said, trying to hide his disappointment. I'll go change. 5 minutes. He went up to their bedroom on the second floor. The room was the same as always. A large bed with a dark blue bedspread, photographs of their honeymoon in Italy on the dresser, a stack of books on his bedside table. He was currently reading Moby Dick. But even here, in their personal space, Jack felt out of place. He changed into jeans and a sweater, looking at his reflection in the mirror. Dark hair with light gray at the temples, tired blue eyes. I'm getting old, he thought with a slight grin. Returning to the kitchen, he found that Emma had already set the table. Herbed chicken, mashed potatoes, and mixed salad are their usual dinner. They sat down opposite each other, and Jack tried to bring lightness to the conversation. Remember how we went to Tahoe last year? He began, helping himself to food. I was thinking, maybe we'll go there again this year. We rent the same house by the lake. You love to walk there in the morning. Emma looked up from her plate, and this time her smile was genuine. Yes, it's beautiful there, she agreed, especially when there is fog over the water. But then she fell silent, as if something was stopping her from continuing. I'm already looking at the dates, Jack continued, hoping to stir her up. Maybe in early December, you will have a vacation. Maybe, she answered, picking at the salad with a fork. Let's see how the work goes. Jack suppressed a sigh. He wanted to ask what was happening to her, but was afraid that this would lead to a quarrel. Instead, he changed the subject. By the way, today I saw Leela, our new designer, in the office. She suggested updating the company logo. The idea is not bad, but I said that this is not my department. He grinned. She's so energetic, just like you when we first met. Emma raised an eyebrow, and something akin to curiosity flashed in her gaze. Energetic, then? She said with a slight mockery. How old is she? 25 years old. 28, I think, Jack answered, shrugging. But that's not what I'm talking about. It just reminded me how you were always excited about new projects. Remember how you spent nights working on that advertising campaign for the bakery? Emma smiled, but her gaze remained intense. Yes, I remember that. It was grueling, but we made it through. She paused, her expression softening. You were so supportive, didn't sleep with me, brought me coffee. Jack nodded, feeling warm at the memory. How could I not help? You were on the edge, but you looked so alive. He paused, looking at her. You're still like that, you know. Emma looked away, her fingers nervously fiddling with her napkin. Sometimes I miss those times, she said quietly. Everything was simpler. Jack frowned, catching the note of sadness in her voice. Easier? He asked again. What are you talking about? She shook her head, as if dismissing her words. Nothing, just nostalgia, probably. Eat, or it will get cold. The rest of dinner passed in almost complete silence. Jack tried to start a conversation about work, about the neighbors, about the new series they started watching, but Emma answered briefly, her thoughts clearly being elsewhere. After dinner, she volunteered to wash the dishes, and Jack went into the living room to turn on the TV. But instead of watching the news, he sat on the sofa, staring into space. His eyes fell on the photo on the mantelpiece him and Emma at Lake Tahoe, laughing, hugging against the backdrop of snow-capped mountains. Then they were happy, or so he thought. Now he wasn't sure. Emma had changed, and it wasn't just tiredness. She was hiding something, and this thought gnawed at him like a thorn. He decided not to put pressure on her today. I'll give her time, he thought, although deep down he knew that he couldn't ignore his suspicions for long. Jack stood up, turned off the TV, and headed upstairs to get a book. Reading Moby Dick was his way of disconnecting from the world, but even that wasn't helping today. He lay in bed, listening to Emma potter around the kitchen, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like a stranger in his own home. Emma went up to the bedroom an hour later. She silently changed into her pajamas and lay down, turning her back to Jack. Usually she would cling to him, but today there was an invisible wall between them. Jack lay there and thought about her words. Everything was simpler. What did she mean? "Good night," he muttered, hoping for an answer. "Calm," she answered quietly, almost in a whisper. Jack Wilson sat at the dining room table, slowly eating the mashed potatoes Emma had prepared for dinner. The aroma of herbed chicken was still in the air, but his thoughts were far from food. Emma, sitting opposite, seemed a little more animated today than the day before. Her green eyes sparkled, and her smile, although slightly strained, appeared more often. Jack tried to convince himself that yesterday's aloofness was just fatigue, but her short answers and evasive gaze haunted him. He decided not to push, but just enjoy the evening. After all, this was their home, their routine, their life. "Would you like some wine?" Emma asked, suddenly standing up and heading towards the cabinet where they kept the bottles. Her voice was light, almost playful, which surprised Jack a little. She usually preferred tea after dinner. "Guilt?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "What, are we celebrating something?" Emma shrugged, pulling out a bottle of Pinot Noir. Her gray sweater had ridden up slightly, exposing a strip of skin above her jeans, and Jack couldn't help but glance at her. She was still beautiful slender, with soft dark curls that spilled out of her bun. Even after 15 years of marriage, he found himself admiring her. "Just the mood," she answered, putting 2 glasses on the table. "It's not the time to be serious, is it?" Jack smiled, although her words caused slight concern. "Well, I won't refuse. Just don't pour too much. You have to get up early tomorrow." She rolled her eyes as she poured the wine. "Relax, Jack. 1 glass won't kill your productivity." He took the glass, took a sip, and nodded. "Not bad. Is this what we took last year in the Willamette Valley?" "Yeah," Emma confirmed, sitting back down. She took a sip and looked at him over the top of her glass. "Do you remember how we got drunk at the tasting? You almost bought a whole box then." Jack chuckled, feeling the tension release a little. "Yes, and you talked me out of it. She said that we have nowhere to store it. And then we danced half the night to that stupid music in the bar." Emma laughed, and her laughter was so sincere that Jack forgot about his worries for a second. "You're a terrible dancer, by the way," she teased, "but it was fun." "Hey, I tried," he countered, feigning offense. "And by the way, you said then that I was charming." "Maybe I was drunk," she retorted, but her eyes sparkled. She leaned a little closer, and Jack caught the familiar scent of her perfume floral, with a hint of vanilla. The conversation flowed more easily than it had in weeks. They remembered trips, old jokes, moments that connected them. Jack felt the warmth of the wine, and her proximity relaxed him. Maybe he really was exaggerating. Maybe Emma was just stressed out at work, and he worked himself up. After dinner, Emma suggested we skip the dishes and go upstairs. "We'll leave this for the morning," she said, taking his hand. Her fingers were warm, and she squeezed his hand lightly. "Come on, I just want to lie with you." Jack was surprised, but did not object. "Are you sure? You always say that dirty dishes spoil the mood." "I don't care about dishes today," she answered with a slight grin, pulling him towards the stairs. In the bedroom, Emma surprised him even more. As soon as they were behind the closed door, she pulled him towards her and kissed him not as usual, but with some unexpected passion. Jack froze for a second, stunned by her pressure, but quickly responded, feeling the desire awakening in him. Her hands slid under his sweater, and he felt the heat of her skin. You," he began, but she interrupted him with another kiss, deeper, almost demanding. "Don't say anything," she whispered, pulling away only for a moment. "Just be with me." Jack didn't argue. He succumbed to her initiative, and soon they were in bed. Emma was different, more active, more courageous than usual. Her movements, her breathing, her touches, everything was like in those early years of their marriage, when they could not get enough of each other. Jack was lost in the moment. It was unexpected, almost overwhelming, and he couldn't help but admit that it had awakened something long forgotten within him. When it was over, they lay in the dark, breathing heavily. Jack turned to Emma, still feeling the warmth of her body next to him. He wanted to say something light, maybe a joke, but she beat him to it. Her voice, soft and slightly hoarse, cut through the silence. "Jack," she began, looking at the ceiling. "I was thinking, maybe we should try something new." He turned on his side, leaning on his elbow, and looked at her. Her face was barely visible in the dim light pouring from the window. "New?" he asked again, smiling. "Are you talking about what just happened? Because hell yes, it was. Amazing." Emma didn't smile back. Instead, she took a deep breath, as if gathering her courage. "No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about us. About our marriage. Maybe we should open it." Jack froze, feeling his heart skip a beat. He was sure he had heard wrong. "Open," he repeated, his voice deeper. "What do you mean?" Emma turned to him, her eyes sparkling in the darkness. "Open relationship, Jack. When we can, date other people. This doesn't mean that we will stop loving each other. Just add some variety." The words hit him like a cold shower. Jack sat up on the bed, trying to comprehend what he had heard. His mind refused to accept it. Emma, his Emma, with whom he shared everything, his home, his dreams, 15 years of his life, was offering. What? Sleeping with others? He felt a mixture of shock and anger boiling in his chest. "Are you serious?" he asked, his voice trembling. We were just together, and you just suggest that we sleep with other people." Emma sat up too, pulling the blanket over her chest. Her face became serious, almost defiant. "Jack, don't be dramatic. This is not about stopping being together. It's about freedom, about not stagnating. We've been married for 10 years, and sometimes I feel like we're stuck." "Are you stuck?" He almost shouted it, but stopped himself, lowering his voice. "Emma, we're not stuck. We have a house, work, and plans. We were literally talking about Tahoe today, and you call this stagnation?" She sighed, looking away. "You don't understand. I'm not saying I don't love you. I just want new sensations, and I thought you might want it too." Jack looked at her as if he was seeing her for the first time. The woman lying next to her was a stranger. Her words cut like a knife, undermining everything he believed in. "New sensations," he repeated, his voice becoming colder. "Emma, when we got married, we made vows. Love, respect, be faithful. Are you now saying that all this means nothing to you?" "Don't distort it," she answered sharply, her eyes flashing. "I'm not saying that I don't respect you or don't love you. But Jack, be honest, haven't you ever thought? Don't you sometimes want something different?" He shook his head, not believing his ears. "No, Emma, I didn't think so, because I chose you, and I thought that you chose me." He paused, trying to calm his racing heart. "What, are you already with someone? Are you already thinking about someone?" Emma looked away, and this gesture was more eloquent than any words. Jack felt his stomach tighten. "Answer," he demanded, his voice becoming firmer. "Is that why you're suddenly so passionate today? Because you have someone in mind?" "No." She almost shouted it, but then lowered her voice. "No, Jack, nothing like that. I just, I read articles, talk to people. Many couples do this, and it helps. I thought we could at least discuss." "Discuss?" He almost laughed, but the laughter got stuck in his throat. "Emma, you just suggested that we break up our marriage, and you call it a discussion. Do you even know what that sounds like?" She crossed her arms, her face becoming stubborn. "Do you understand that your reaction is pure conservatism? You don't even want to try to understand. You immediately close." "Conservatism?" Jack got out of bed, unable to sit any longer. He grabbed his jeans from the floor and began to pull them on, needing to move so he wouldn't explode. "This is not conservatism, Emma. It's respect for what we've built, to what I thought was important to both of us." Emma looked at him, her lips pressed tightly together. "Jack, I don't want to quarrel. I just want us to be honest with each other. If you don't want to, fine. But don't make me a monster." He turned to her, his eyes burning. "Are you honest? Do you want honesty? Okay, here's some honesty. I don't want to share you with anyone, and I won't. And I don't want you to share with me. If this isn't enough for you, then." He fell silent, unable to finish. The words, "then we're finished," stuck in my throat. Emma was silent, looking away. The silence was deafening, and Jack felt a wall growing between them. He grabbed the pillow and blanket from the bed. "I'll sleep in the guest room," he said, heading towards the door. "Jack, wait," she began, but he had already left, slamming the door a little harder than he intended. In the guest room, he threw a pillow on the narrow bed and sat down with his head in his hands. His thoughts swirled like leaves in the autumn wind. Emma, had just turned their world upside down. And what's worse is that she did it after they were so close. He could still smell her on his skin, her warmth, her passion. Why was she like this today? Why did she suddenly become so alive, so desirable? He remembered her movements, her initiative, her eyes glowing in the darkness. It was like in their youth, when they could not tear themselves away from each other. But now this memory was poisoned by her words. Open relationships, he clenched his fists, feeling anger mixed with pain. How could she? How could she take this moment so rare, so intimate, and ruin it with that sentence? Jack closed his eyes, trying to figure out where it came from. Emma had never acted like this in bed before, never been so assertive. It was amazing until she opened her mouth. He remembered how her hands slid over his body, how she whispered his name. And now he couldn't help but think that it wasn't for him. Maybe she imagined someone else. Maybe it was not their moment, but her fantasy. He lay down, looking at the ceiling. The evening could be wonderful. They could cuddle, laugh, and plan a trip to Tahoe. Instead, he's here, alone, in the cold guest room, with their marriage falling apart at the seams. The pleasure of their intimacy, so bright just an hour ago, now seemed dirty, spoiled by her words. How could she throw away their vows so easily? And why now, after such a moment, did she decide to say this? A3 in the Wilson house was saturated with tension that Jack could feel on his skin. He woke up in the guest room, where the mattress was too hard and the pillow was paper thin. The conversation with Emma yesterday, her proposal for an open relationship, was still throbbing in his head like a fresh wound. He lay looking at the cracks in the ceiling and tried to understand how their marriage, which seemed so strong, had ended up on the brink of an abyss. Her passion last night, her unexpected initiative in bed, all this now seemed to him not a gift, but a deception. He couldn't help but think that her proposal was not spontaneous, but long thought out, and that scared him most of all. Jack forced himself to stand, although his body protested. He pulled on yesterday's sweater and jeans and washed his face with cold water, hoping it would clear the fog from his head. Today he wanted to talk to Emma, not to quarrel, but to understand. Maybe she'll change her mind and admit that she got carried away. Maybe they can go back to the way things were. He went down to the kitchen, where the smell of coffee was already filling the air. Emma was there, standing at the stove, stirring something in a bowl pancake batter, I think. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she was wearing an old t-shirt and sweatpants. She looked so familiar, but Jack knew that there was now a wall between them. "Good morning," he said, trying to sound neutral. He poured himself some coffee from the coffee maker, feeling her eyes follow him. "Morning," Emma answered. Her voice was even, but there was a slight wariness in it. She continued to stir the dough without looking at him. "Do you want pancakes?" Jack nodded, sitting down at the table. "Yes, that sounds good." He took a sip of coffee, collecting his thoughts. Silence hung between them, and he decided not to delay. We need to talk." "Oh, yesterday." Emma froze, her hand holding the spoon stopped. She turned slowly, and her green eyes met his. "Jack, I thought you said everything you wanted," she replied, her tone cool. "You made it clear that you don't agree." "Because this is crazy," he said, trying not to break down. "Emma, you suggested that we sleep with other people. How should I have reacted? Say, 'Oh, cool, let's try it.'" She sighed, crossing her arms. "I didn't expect you to agree right away, but I hoped that you would at least think. This is not about ruining our marriage. It's about freedom, about not feeling locked in." Jack shook his head, feeling his anger boil over again. "Freedom? Emma, marriage is not a prison. It's a choice. We chose each other, or are you already regretting it?" Her face tensed, and she looked away. Don't overdo it. I don't regret marrying you. But Jack, we've been married 10 years. 10. Sometimes I feel like we're just coasting along. Haven't you ever thought that things could be different? Otherwise, he clutched his mug, trying not to raise his voice. What do you mean, otherwise? If you're bored, if I don't suit you, tell me directly. But don't ask me to share you with someone else. This is not an option, and I will never do this. Emma looked at him, her lips pressed into a thin line. It's not about the fact that you don't suit me. This is about me. I want to feel alive, Jack. I want new impressions. And I thought you could at least try to understand. Do you understand? His voice became quieter, but there was pain in it. Emma, I understand one thing. You want something that destroys everything I believe in. When we got married, we promised to be faithful. Does this mean nothing to you now? Stop making me a villain, she snapped, her eyes flashing. I didn't break any promises. I was honest with you. I could have remained silent, but I told the truth. It's called trust, Jack. Trust? He almost laughed, but the laugh was bitter. You call this trust? Tell me to watch you date other people and pretend everything is fine? That's not trust, Emma. I don't even know what this is. She turned to the stove, beginning to pour the batter into the pan. If you don't even want to talk about it, then what should we talk about? She said, her voice becoming colder. I'm not going to pretend that I don't feel what I feel. Jack looked at her back, feeling his hope fading. He wanted to reach out to her, but she was adamant, as if she had already decided everything. He began, softening his tone. Listen, I don't want to fight. I just want to understand. If something is wrong, tell me. We can fix this. Together. But this is not a solution. Emma was silent as she flipped the pancake. Then she said quietly, I don't know, Jack. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. But I can't just take it and forget about it. Her words hung in the air, and Jack felt the emptiness growing in his chest. He wanted to say something else, but Emma's phone, which was lying on the table, suddenly vibrated and the screen lit up. She glanced quickly, but did not move. Jack noticed how her shoulders tensed, and it gave him a pang of suspicion. Who is this? He asked, trying to sound casual. Nobody, she answered too quickly, returning to the frying pan. Work, probably. Jack looked at the phone, thoughts swirling in his head. Her proposal yesterday, her stubbornness today, all this began to form a disturbing picture. What if she's already made a move? What if she wasn't just fantasizing about an open relationship, but was already acting on it? He remembered her passion last night, her unexpected initiative. Maybe it wasn't for him. Maybe she had already opened up about their marriage without asking him. I'm serious, he said, his voice becoming firmer. If you are corresponding with someone, tell me. I deserve to know. She turned sharply, her eyes narrowed. Jack, are you serious? Are you going to suspect me of everything now? It's just a job. Calm down. Calm down? He stood up, unable to sit any longer. You suggested yesterday that we sleep with other people, and now you're surprised that I don't trust you? Emma, I'm trying to save our marriage, and you. And you are making an enemy out of me, she interrupted, her voice rising. I didn't do anything, Jack. I was honest. If you can't handle it, that's your problem. My problem? He clenched his fists, feeling his anger overflowing. Okay, Emma, do what you want, but don't expect me to sit and watch. He grabbed his mug and headed to the sink to pour out his coffee. Emma was silent, and her silence was worse than any words. Jack felt their connection breaking, like the threads they had been weaving for years were breaking one after another. He wanted to leave, but suddenly he heard Emma say, I need to go to the bathroom. Pancakes are on the table. Eat if you want. She left the kitchen angry, leaving him alone. Jack stood looking at the pan where the pancakes were sizzling. His gaze fell on her phone lying on the table. The screen lit up again, another notification. Jack felt his heart clench. He never checked her phone, never doubted her. But now, after her words, after her stubbornness, he could not stop himself. What if she's already dating someone? What if she opened up their marriage without telling him? He took the phone without any doubt. The screen was without a password. Emma had never set a lock, trusting him. Or maybe she didn't care. He opened the messaging app and saw a chat with the name Matt. The last message read, "Tomorrow at 7, Riverside has a beauty." Emma replied, "Yes, that sounds great. I can't wait." Jack felt the blood drain from his face. He scrolled up the chat, seeing their correspondence light, with jokes, with hints that left no doubt. This was not a work communication. It was a date. His wife was planning to meet another man, and her emoji, that damn emoji, cut him like a knife. He put the phone down, his hands shaking. The trust that he considered the basis of their marriage collapsed in an instant. He remembered her words about honesty, and now they sounded like a mockery. She wasn't just thinking about open relationships. She was already taking steps, and the thought that she might already have imagined this Matt when I was with him last night made him feel dirty, cheated. Jack sat down with his head in his hands. He heard Emma return, her steps light, unsuspecting. He didn't know how to look into her eyes. He didn't know how to continue this day, and this marriage, in principle, too. Jack Wilson sat in the living room of their home in suburban Portland, clutching a mug of long-cooled coffee. The television was silent, and the silence in the room was almost deafening, interrupted only by the ticking of the wall clock. It was about 6 in the evening, and Emma, his wife, was getting ready upstairs. Jack knew where she was going. After he saw her correspondence with Matt, after their arguments and his ultimatum, she did not back down. Today was her date night. The day before, Jack gave her one last chance. Seeing the messages on her phone, he could not remain silent. When Emma came out of the bathroom, he looked into her eyes and said directly, "Emma, are you dating someone?" His voice was firm, but inside he was trembling, hoping that she would refute everything. She froze, her face turning pale, but then she straightened up, as if preparing to defend herself. "Jack, I don't do anything behind your back," she replied, but her gaze darted to the side. "I told you that I want to try something new. I was honest." "Honest?" He stepped closer, his voice becoming sharper. "I saw your phone, Emma. Matt. Riverside, tomorrow at 7. What is this? A business meeting? Don't lie to me." Emma pursed her lips, her cheeks flushed. "Did you go through my phone?" she said, her voice trembling with anger. "You don't trust me." "Trust?" He almost started screaming, but restrained himself. "You suggested an open relationship, and now you're arranging a meeting with some guy. How am I supposed to understand this, Emma? Tell." She looked away, her fingers nervously fiddling with the hem of her t-shirt. "It's not what you think," she said finally. "Matt is a colleague. We're just communicating. I didn't sleep with him, if that's what you mean." "But you are going to," Jack said, his voice becoming quieter, but there was pain in it. "You're going on a date, Emma. Don't pretend it's just coffee. I saw your messages. You can't wait. Is this your honesty?" Emma was silent, and her silence was more eloquent than any words. Jack felt his heart clench. He took a step towards her, his voice almost pleading. He said, looking into her eyes, "This is your last chance. If you say now that you won't go, that we can fix everything, I'll try to forget. We can go to a therapist, start over, whatever. But if you go on this date, I don't know if I can continue living with you. Please think about it." Her eyes sparkled, and for a second Jack thought she was hesitating. But then she shook her head, her face hardening. "Jack, I don't want to lie to you," she said quietly. "I don't know what will happen, but I have to do it. For myself. I don't want to regret for the rest of my life that I didn't try." Her words hit him like cold steel. He retreated, feeling the emptiness growing in his chest. "Okay," he said, his voice icy. "Then do what you want. But don't expect me to stay and put up with it." He went into the living room, leaving her alone, and spent the rest of the day in silence, trying to understand that their 15-year marriage was crumbling. He did not sleep, replaying their conversation in his head, her look, her words. She didn't choose him, not their family, and some Matt and his new impressions. Now Jack sat listening to Emma come down the stairs. Her heels clicked on the wooden steps, each sound reverberating in his chest. He didn't want to see her, but he couldn't bring himself to leave. He had to face this, had to see her leave, to finally understand. It's over. Emma entered the living room, and Jack involuntarily looked up. She was dressed for the evening, a black dress that emphasized her figure, light makeup, loose dark hair. She looked beautiful, and it cut him like a knife. She wasn't preparing for him. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice quiet but firm. She was holding a small purse and car keys. "I'll be back late." Jack looked at her, feeling anger and pain fighting inside. He wanted to scream, but his voice was cold, almost alien. "Is that all you have to say?" he asked. "You just walk away like it's normal?" Emma pursed her lips, her eyes avoiding his gaze. "Jack, I don't want to fight again," she said. "I told you that I need this. You may not agree, but this is my decision." "Your decision?" he repeated, his voice trembling. "What about me, Emma? What about us? 15 years, our home, our vows, does that mean nothing to you?" She finally looked at him, and a hint of guilt flashed in her eyes, but she quickly suppressed it. "This is not about disrespecting you," she said. "It's about me. I don't want to lose myself, Jack. I'll come back and we'll talk, okay? Shall we talk?" He stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "About what, Emma? About how you spent the evening with another guy. How can I live with this now? Do you even understand what you're doing?" She looked away, her fingers clutching her purse nervously. "I have to go," she said quietly, and turned to the door. "Emma," he said, his voice breaking. "If you leave now, that's the end. I'm not kidding. I won't be able to survive this." She froze, her hand on the doorknob. But then she opened the door and walked out without saying a word. The door closed with a soft click, and Jack was left alone. The sound of her car driving away from the house was like the final blow. Jack sank onto the sofa, his hands shaking. He didn't cry, but everything inside was burning. Anger flared up in him, and he decided to act. He went upstairs to their bedroom and opened the closet. Her clothes hung in neat rose dresses, blouses, jeans. He began to take her things off the hangers, throwing them on the bed. Then he opened the dresser drawers, pulling out her t-shirts, pajamas, and underwear. He put everything that belonged to her in a pile. After collecting her things, Jack carried them downstairs to the living room. He dumped his clothes on the sofa, not caring about the order. It was his way of saying, "You are no longer part of this space." He didn't want her sleeping in their bed in their room after what she had done. The guest room was her place now if she ever returned. When he finished, he returned to the bedroom and locked the door from the inside. The key turned with a quiet click, and the sound brought him a strange sense of relief. He lay down on the bed, still smelling her perfume on the pillow, and closed his eyes. But sleep did not come. Instead, his thoughts circled, returning to Emma, to her choices, to their broken marriage. He imagined her laughing with Matt, her hand touching his, and every image was like poison. By midnight, he realized that he could no longer live in this limbo. Emma made her choice, and he had to make his. He couldn't forgive her, not after that. Their trust was broken, and he saw no way back. He took out his phone and texted his friend Mark, a lawyer. "Need advice on divorce. Call tomorrow." In the morning, when the first rays of sun broke through the curtains, Jack felt empty but determined. He didn't know what the day would bring, didn't know if Emma would return or what she would say. But one thing was clear, their marriage was over. She was gone, and he wasn't going to wait for her to completely destroy him. Jack woke up in their bedroom, but the bed felt cold and foreign, despite the familiar smell of the sheets. Jack stood up, feeling a heaviness in his body, as if someone had tied weights to him. He washed his face and changed into a clean shirt and jeans, but every step around the house felt like walking through a minefield. The living room where he left Emma's things looked chaotic. Her dresses, t-shirts, and jeans lay on the sofa like a silent reproach. He didn't know if she'd returned that night after he'd locked the bedroom. He'd heard nothing but his own thoughts. But now, standing in the kitchen and pouring coffee, he heard a rustling in the living room. Emma was at home. He clutched his mug, preparing for the meeting. His decision was firm. He could not continue living with her after what she had done. Her betrayal, her choice to leave despite his pleas, had destroyed everything he believed was their marriage. He had written to Mark, his lawyer friend, and was now just waiting for confirmation to begin the divorce process. But first he had to tell her this. Emma entered the kitchen, and Jack involuntarily tensed. She looked tired. Her dark hair was disheveled, her makeup was slightly smeared, and the dress she wore yesterday was wrinkled. She stopped in the doorway, her green eyes meeting his, and for a second Jack saw uncertainty in them. But he did not allow himself to soften. "Good morning," she said quietly, her voice hoarse, as if she had not slept. She walked towards the coffee maker, but her movements were hesitant, as if she was afraid to break the silence. "Morning," Jack answered, his voice cold and even. He watched her pour the coffee and felt his anger boil again. She returned as if nothing had happened after spending the evening with another man. How could she? Emma turned to him, holding the mug in her hands. "Jack," she began, her voice shaking, "we need to talk." "Oh, yesterday." He raised an eyebrow, his lips pressed into a thin line. "Should I talk?" he asked, his tone full of sarcasm. "About what, Emma? How did you spend your evening? How was it with Matt?" "Don't bother, I don't want to know." Her face turned pale, and she put the mug on the table as if she was afraid to drop it. "Jack, please listen to me," she said, her voice becoming pleading. "It's not what you think. I didn't expect you to react like that. I thought we could discuss this like adults." "How are the adults?" He stepped closer, his eyes burning. "Emma, I gave you a chance. I begged you not to go. I said it's over if you leave. And you went anyway." She flinched as if his words were a slap in the face. "I didn't want to betray you," she said, her voice breaking. I I just wanted to try something new. I didn't think it would hurt you so much. Matt, it was just a date, Jack. Nothing happened. Nothing happened." He almost laughed, but the laugh was bitter. "You left Emma. You flirted with him. You sat there laughing while I was going crazy. And you call it nothing? Do you even understand what you did?" Emma looked away, her hands shaking. I I was wrong," she whispered. "I didn't think it would be like this. I'm back, Jack. I'm here. We can fix this." "I can't fix this. I can't even look at you without imagining you with him." Her eyes filled with tears, but Jack did not feel pity. Her tears were belated, empty. She had made her choice, and now he had to make his. "Jack, please," she began, stepping towards him. "I didn't want to lose you. I thought. I thought it wouldn't change anything between us. I was stupid, I know. But I love you. We can go to a therapist, we can." "That's enough," he snapped, raising his hand. "I don't want to hear it. You don't love me, Emma. If you loved me, you wouldn't have left yesterday. You wouldn't look me in the eyes and lie that this is for you. You chose yourself, and now I choose myself." She froze, her tears flowing down her cheeks, but she did not try to wipe them away. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Jack looked at her, feeling his resolve harden. "I want a divorce," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I can't live with you after this. I can't trust you. And I don't want to pretend that everything is fine." Emma gasped, her hand pressed to her chest, as if she was trying to stop herself from falling. "Divorce?" she whispered. "Jack, you're not serious. We can fix this. I'll do whatever you want. Please don't do this." "You did it, Emma," he said, his voice cold. "You left. You chose him. And I can't live with this. I don't want to." She stepped towards him, her hands reaching for his sleeve, but he stepped back, not allowing her to touch. "Jack, I'm begging you," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose us. It was a mistake, I swear. I will never do anything like that again." He shook his head, feeling her words shatter his resolve. "Your vows mean nothing, Emma," he said. "You've already broken them. And I can't pretend it didn't happen. I contacted a lawyer. We will begin the process." Her face contorted, and she sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. Jack, no, she whispered. Please no, I can't. I don't want this. Jack looked at her, and part of him wanted to comfort her, to hug her, to tell her that everything would be okay. But the other part, the one that was crushed by her betrayal, did not allow it. He couldn't forgive her. Not now. Not after she left, knowing it would destroy him. I'm going to work, he said, taking his briefcase. Your things are in the living room. You can sleep there. I stay in the bedroom. Emma raised her head, her eyes red from crying. Jack, please, she began, but he had already turned and left the kitchen. He couldn't listen to her anymore. Her words, her tears, it was all too late. In the car, on the way to the office, Jack felt empty. He turned on the radio, but the music was annoying, so he turned it off. His thoughts were chaotic, but one thing was clear. He made the right choice. Emma had broken their trust, and he couldn't live with that. Divorce was the only way out, although the very thought of it tore his heart. In the office, he tried to concentrate on his work, but the numbers on the computer screen were blurry. His colleague, Leela, noticed his condition and looked into his office. Jack, are you okay? She asked, her voice light but concerned. You look like you've been run over by a truck. He forced himself to smile. Just a bad day, he said. It's okay. If you want to talk, I'm here, she said with a wink and left. Jack looked after her, thinking how easy Leela lives, how freely she smiles. Emma used to be like this, but now she was a stranger. In the evening, when Jack returned home, he discovered that Emma had removed her things from the living room. She left a note on the table. I'm in the guest room. Please think again. I love you. Jack crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Her words no longer had weight. He locked the bedroom, went to bed, and closed his eyes, but sleep did not come. All that was left was emptiness and a determination to move on, even if it meant the end of their marriage. Jack Wilson was on his way to the office. The Portland morning was shrouded in gray fog, and wet leaves clung to the windshield, obscuring my view. He didn't really sleep. The night passed in half asleep, interrupted by thoughts about Emma, her betrayal, and the note that he found in the morning. I went to Sarah for a few days. Please think again. The note was now in the trash can, but its words still burned him. Emma went to stay with a friend, leaving him in an empty house, and this was both a relief and a new blow. She didn't fight for their marriage, she just ran away. Jack turned on the radio, hoping to drown out his thoughts, but the news about the weather only irritated him. He turned it off and focused on the road. Work was his only salvation. In the office, he could drown in numbers, reports, meetings, anything, just not to think about the fact that their 15-year marriage was falling apart like a house of cards. He had already contacted Mark, his lawyer friend, and he promised to call back today. Divorce was inevitable, but the very thought of it still seemed unreal. In the office, Jack threw himself into his work. He arrived before everyone else, turning on the coffee maker in the break room and taking his office. The computer screen became his sanctuary. He checked financial reports, analyzed client data, prepared a presentation for a new campaign. Every click, every character typed was a way to keep my mind busy. He didn't want to think about Emma, about her black dress, about her date with Matt. But the images kept popping up, and he clenched his teeth, forcing himself to concentrate. Around lunchtime, Leela Morgan, a 28-year-old designer whose energy was like a ray of light in the gray office landscape, dropped into his office. She was holding a folder of sketches. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her green blouse contrasted with the dull beige walls. "Jack, do you have a minute?" she asked, smiling so that her blue eyes sparkled. "I want to show you a couple of ideas for rebranding, or just save you from this screen. You look like you're blending in with him." Jack looked up from the monitor, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. Leela always knew how to diffuse the situation, and her lightness was what he needed so much now. "I'll have a minute," he said, leaning back in his chair. "What do you have?" Leela put the folder on the table and opened it, showing sketches of logos for the coffee shop that their company had agreed to promote. "Here, look. I thought they wanted something warm, but with a modern vibe. How do you like this one, with the cup and leaves?" Jack glanced at the sketches. They were good, clean lines, soft colors, a cozy feel. Strongly, he said, nodding. This one with leaves is right on point. Sounds like what they want. Have you already shown it to your boss? Not yet, Leela answered, sitting down on the edge of his table. I wanted your opinion first. You are our specialist in convincing the client that this is brilliant. He chuckled, feeling something like warmth for the first time that day. This is not a specialist, but an experience, he said. But yes, it will do. Add a couple of numbers about sales growth, and they are yours. Leela rolled her eyes, but her smile was infectious. Oh, Jack, you are unbearable with these numbers. When was the last time you did something just for fun? Live a little. Her words touched him, reminding him of Emma and her new impressions. He frowned, but tried to hide it. Not everyone needs a fan, Leela, he said, trying to sound joking. Someone needs to keep this office afloat. Well, you can't be a bore forever, she retorted, leaning a little closer. Listen, the guys and I are going to the bar after work. Beer, chat, nothing serious. Will you go? You could definitely use a shake-up. Jack shook his head, although her offer sounded tempting. Thank you, but I'll pass. It's up to my neck. Business? She raised an eyebrow. Jack, you look like a zombie. 1 hour, 1 beer. I won't force you to sing karaoke, I promise. He smiled involuntarily. Her energy was like a breath of fresh air in a musty office. We'll see, he said, not wanting to promise. But the sketches are cool. Finish it, and I'll help you present it. We agree, Leela said, standing up. But I'll still get you out, Wilson. You can't hide behind your tables forever. She left, leaving behind a light scent of citrus perfume. Jack looked at the closed door, feeling her words still ringing in his head. Leela was right, he was hiding. But work was the only thing that kept him afloat. He stayed late in the office, working on a project that could have waited. When the office emptied, he was left alone, and the silence reminded him of an empty house. Emma went to stay with Sarah, which gave him some respite, but also increased his feelings of loneliness. He imagined her in her friend's apartment, discussing their quarrel, justifying herself. Or maybe she's already texting Matt, planning another meeting. This thought made him squeeze the handle until it cracked. At home, Jack cooked himself dinner, scrambled eggs and toast, and sat in the living room, turning on the TV. But news about traffic and weather couldn't distract him. He remembered Leela, her invitation to the bar, and regretted that he had refused. Her lightness, her laughter were what he missed. He wasn't looking for anything more, but her presence helped him forget about the pain, at least for a moment. The next day, Leela stopped by again, this time with coffee. Here, she said, placing the glass on his table. Americano without sugar. You look like the coffee maker is your only friend. Thank you, Jack said, surprised by her attention. Are you my personal barista now? Yeah, I'm a multi-talented hero, she replied, grinning. Listen, I was serious about the bar yesterday. Shall we go today? There will be a couple of people there, no big deal. Jack looked at her open smile and felt something inside soften. Okay, he said finally. 1 beer, but no karaoke. Hooray, Leela exclaimed, clapping her hands. At 7, at the old tavern. Don't you dare run away, Wilson. She left, and Jack was left with coffee and a slight surprise. He didn't know why he agreed, but her energy was infectious. In the evening, he came to the bar, and Leela greeted him with a wide smile. They sat with 2 other colleagues, drank beer, joked, and Jack felt like he could breathe for the first time in a week. Leela told me how she once got stuck in an airport in Mexico, and her laughter was like music. You should go there, she said, looking at him. Mexico is a pure thrill. Sun, tequila, no reports. Maybe, Jack answered, smiling. But tequila is not my thing. I'll teach you, she winked, and her playfulness made his heart beat a little faster. Conversations with Leela became his outlet. She didn't know about his breakup with Emma, but her humor, her lightness helped him forget about the pain. He began to wait for her visits, her jokes, her smile. But he also knew that this relief was temporary. At home, reality awaited him. An empty house, a call from a lawyer, a divorce. Emma went to Sarah, but her betrayal still hung over him like a cloud. And although Leela was like a ray of light, Jack knew that he had a long way to go to find himself again. Leela was like a breath of fresh air. Her smile, her jokes, her ability to find joy in little things made Jack feel alive, at least for an hour or two. After that first trip to the bar, she invited him and her colleagues again, and to his surprise, he agreed. Her energy was contagious, and he couldn't refuse. Today, Leela looked into his office towards the end of the working day, holding a tablet with new sketches in her hands. She wore her blonde hair down and wore a black sweater with jeans for a relaxed yet stylish look. She smiled, and her blue eyes sparkled with mischief. "Jack, save me," she said, plopping down on the chair opposite. "The boss wants 3 more logo options for the coffee shop, but I've run out of ideas. Any thoughts?" Jack sat back in his chair, glad for the break. "3 options?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yesterday you showed 5. What, now he wants a whole gallery?" "Yeah," Leela sighed, but her vision of her tablet. "It looks like he wants me to draw him an entire exhibition." She looked at Jack, her lips curling into a slight smile. "Maybe you can come up with something brilliant. You are our master of persuasion." He chuckled, her playful tone taking some of the tension off his shoulders. "Okay, let's see," he said, moving closer. "Show me what you have." Leela leaned over, showing the sketches on her tablet. Their hands accidentally touched, and Jack felt a slight prick, not discomfort, but something warm, almost forgotten. He quickly looked away, focusing on the screen. "This one's not bad," he said, pointing to the logo with a minimalist image of a coffee cup. "But maybe add some accent. For example, a bright color to make it stand out." Not bad, Wilson," Leela said, nodding. "You are starting to speak like a designer. Be careful, I might drag you into my team." "Just try," he answered, smiling. "I love my numbers too much." She laughed, and her laughter was as light as the ringing of bells. "Well, if you get tired of numbers, come to me. I'll teach you how to draw. Or at least drink tequila." "Tequila is not my thing," Jack said, but his tone was softer than usual. "But I won't give up coffee." "Agreed," Leela winked. "By the way, are you free today? There is one gallery in the center, opening an exhibition. Nothing pretentious, just pictures and wine. Shall we go?" Jack hesitated. The idea sounded tempting, but he still felt raw, like an open wound. Emma, divorce, pain, all this has not gone away. But Leela looked at him with such sincere hope that he could not refuse. "Okay," he said finally, "but only if the wine is decent." "Oh, I'll find you something better," she promised, standing up. "At 7, at the entrance to the gallery. Don't be late, Wilson." She left, and Jack was left with a slight warmth in his chest. He wasn't sure what he was doing, but her invitation was like a lifeline. Maybe this is what he needs just to go out, get distracted, feel like a person and not a shadow. In the evening, Jack stood at the entrance to the gallery, feeling a little out of place. He put on a dark blue jacket and jeans, trying to look presentable without being too formal. The gallery was small, with white walls and a soft light that made the paintings seem alive. People around were chatting, holding glasses of wine, and Jack involuntarily looked for Leela with his eyes. She appeared a minute later, and Jack involuntarily held his breath. Leela wore a knee-length, off-the-shoulder black dress, her hair falling softly in waves. She looked not just beautiful, but free, like a person who knows what she wants and is not afraid of it. "Wilson, you've come," she exclaimed, hugging him quickly but warmly. Her perfume, something floral with a hint of citrus, tickled his nose. "I thought you were going to run away." "I'm a man of my word," he answered, smiling. "So where is the wine you promised?" "Patience," she winked, leading him to the drinks counter. They each took a glass of red, and Leela began talking about the paintings, her voice full of enthusiasm. "Look at this one," she said, pointing to an abstract canvas with bright strokes. "She's like chaos, but beautiful. Reminds me of what it's like to live without a plan." Jack looked at the painting, then at her. "Without a plan, you say?" he asked. "And how does this work for you?" She shrugged, her smile becoming a little more serious. "Well, I'm not one of those who build castles for life. I like freedom, travel, new people, moments. Serious relationships are not my thing. Too many obligations." Her words hurt him, but did not offend him. He knew she was being honest, and that was refreshing. After Emma's lies, after her honesty, which turned out to be a betrayal, Leela's directness was like a sip of water. "I understand," he said, taking a sip of wine. "Freedom sounds good, but sometimes commitment, it gives you something real." "Maybe," she answered, looking at him carefully, "but I'm not ready to check it yet." "And you? Are you the type who likes plans and stability?" Jack thought about it. A month ago, he would have said yes without hesitation. But now, after the collapse of his marriage, he wasn't sure. "I used to be," he said finally. "Now, I don't know." Leela nodded, her gaze soft, almost understanding. "Life likes to shake us up, right? Well, if you want to try something without plans, I'm here. No pressure, just fun." Her tone was light, but there was a hint of flirtation in her eyes. Jack felt his pulse quicken. He wasn't ready for anything serious. The pain of Emma's betrayal was still bleeding, but the idea of fun, something easy and without obligations, was tempting. "I'll think about it," he said. His voice was quieter, but a warm note appeared in it. She smiled, clinking her glass with him. "This is progress, Wilson." Over the following weeks, their communication became regular. They started meeting outside the office, either in a bar with colleagues, or on a walk along the embankment, or in a small gallery where Leela enthusiastically talked about artists. Their conversations were light, full of jokes and stories. Leela shared stories of her travels, night markets in Thailand, surfing in Costa Rica, and Jack listened, marveling at how her life seemed so full, so free. One evening, after a couple of cocktails at the bar, their flirting became more open. They sat at a table, the lights were dim, and the music was unobtrusive. Leela leaned closer, her hand lightly touching his. "You know, Jack," she said, her voice slightly hoarse from drinking, "you're not as boring as I thought. You have a spark." He smiled, feeling the warmth of her closeness. "You're not as crazy as you pretend," he replied, his tone playful. "Although close." She laughed, her hand lingering on his. "Listen, I'm serious," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I'm not looking for anything deep. But if you want to have fun, I'm game. No strings attached, no drama. Just us, a couple of good points." Jack looked at her, his heart beating faster. He was still broken, still carrying the pain of Emma's betrayal, but Leela was offering something simple, something that didn't require him to trust or promise. And this was exactly what he could afford. "No obligations," he repeated, as if tasting the words. "Sounds doable." She smiled, her fingers squeezing his hand. "Then hold on, Wilson. I'll show you how to live without a plan." Their relationship began easily, as she had promised. They met whenever they were both in the mood. Dinner at a trendy cafe, a walk in the park, an evening at a bar with live music. Sometimes their evenings ended at her home, small but cozy, in her apartment, cluttered with art supplies and travel souvenirs. Their intimacy was passionate but unobtrusive, and Jack felt himself come to life. Leela was open, cheerful, and her touch returned him the feeling that he was still a man, and not just a shadow of his past. But even in these moments, Jack knew that their connection was not love. Leela was honest. She didn't want anything serious, and he, still licking his wounds from Emma, wasn't ready for it. Their conversations remained superficial about her plans to go to South America, about his work, about music or food. They didn't talk about the past, about his divorce, about his pain, and that suited both of them. One day, lying in her bed after one of these evenings, Leela turned to him, her hair scattered across the pillow. "Are you okay, Jack?" she asked, her voice soft. He looked at her, feeling the warmth of her body next to him. "Yes," he said, although this was not entirely true. "I'm just glad you're around." She smiled, but her gaze was attentive. Fine, but if you want to talk, I'm not just talking about fun, you know. He nodded but didn't answer. He appreciated her offer, but couldn't open up. Not now. Instead, he pulled her closer, and they lost themselves in each other again, escaping reality. Their connection made Jack feel alive and gave him back the confidence that Emma had taken away. But he knew it was temporary. Leela was like a bright spark, but not a fire that could warm him for a long time. And while he enjoyed these moments, deep down he knew that he was looking for something more, not now, but someday. Jack Wilson sat in the office of Mark Davis, his friend and lawyer, looking at the stack of papers on his desk. Outside the window, Portland was drowning in November rain, and gray clouds reflected his mood. 2 weeks have passed since Emma left for her friend Sarah, and their communication was reduced to rare messages, short, businesslike, full of unspoken pain. Jack told her of his intention to get a divorce, and although she tried to convince him, he was firm. Her betrayal, her date with Matt, her choice to leave despite his pleas ruined everything he believed was their marriage. Now he wanted one thing, to free himself from the past and move on. Mark's office was small but cozy, with wooden furniture and shelves filled with legal books. Mark, a strong man of about 40 with light gray hair, sat opposite, looking through the documents. He had been Jack's friend since college, and his straightforwardness was what Jack needed right now. So, Mark began, putting down his pen. I have prepared a draft agreement. Are you sure you want to split everything up like this? A house and a car are serious assets. You can claim half. Jack shook his head, his fingers tapping nervously on the armrest of his chair. I don't want to share anything, Mark. Let her take the house, the car, everything. I just want this to end. Mark raised an eyebrow, his gaze intent. Jack, I understand that you are angry, but these are not just emotions. This is your money, your future. Are you sure you won't regret it? Jack looked out the window, where the rain was running down the glass. He thought about home, their home, where he and Emma planned the future, barbecued in the yard, argued about what color to choose for the living room. Now this house was for him only a reminder of her betrayal. He didn't want to go back there, and didn't want to fight for half. He wanted to cross out everything that connected him with her. I'm sure, he said finally, his voice firm, I don't need this house, and let the car take it. I'll rent an apartment and start over. The main thing is that it is fast. Mark sighed but nodded. Fine. I'll draw up an agreement so that she gets the house and the car. You don't have many joint accounts, so it will be easier with finances. But Jack, you have to be prepared for the fact that she may not agree. She already called me and asked me to postpone the process. Jack clenched his teeth, feeling his anger rise again. Did she call you? He asked, his voice becoming harsher. And what did you say? That he wants to talk to you, Mark answered, shrugging his shoulders. He says he's sorry, that he's ready for therapy, whatever you want. But I said that this is your decision, and my job is to represent your interests. Jack shook his head, his lips pressed into a thin line. She's sorry, he muttered, almost sarcastically. Regrets that I didn't swallow her open relationship. She regrets going on a date, but she doesn't regret doing it, Mark. She made a choice. Mark nodded, his face serious. I understand, and I will do everything to make the process go smoothly. But be prepared, she may try to meet you. Do you want me to meditate? No, Jack said, his voice cold. If she wants to talk, I'll tell her myself. But my decision will not change. Got it, Mark said, making a note. I will send her the draft agreement tomorrow. If she agrees, we can file documents in court next week. If not, well, then it will be more difficult. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of the decision settle in his chest. Divorce was inevitable, but the thought of their marriage officially ending still seemed surreal. He remembered their wedding, Emma in a white dress, her smile, their vows. How could everything fall apart so quickly? Thank you, Mark, he said, standing up. Keep me posted. Of course, Mark replied, shaking his hand. And Jack, if anything happens, I'm here, not just as a lawyer. Jack forced himself to smile. I appreciate it, he said, and left the office, feeling the rain cold on his skin. Returning home, Jack discovered that the emptiness of the house had become almost tangible. It was quiet without Emma, but traces of her were still everywhere. Her coffee mug in the closet, her books on the shelf, the photo of their trip to Lake Tahoe on the fireplace. He tried not to look at them, but each object was like an injection. He made himself dinner pasta with sauce from a jar and sat down at the table, trying to concentrate on eating. But his thoughts returned to Emma, to her call to Mark, to her attempts to fix everything. That evening, his phone vibrated, and he saw a message from Emma. "Jack, can we please talk? I know I was wrong. I want to fix everything. Call me." He stared at the screen, feeling anger and pain fighting in his chest. Did she want to talk now, after everything? After she left, knowing that it would destroy him? He deleted the message without replying, but her words still rang in his head. The next day, Emma showed up at their house. Jack was in the living room when he heard the key turn in the lock. His heart skipped a beat, but he forced himself to remain calm. She walked in, her dark hair pulled back into a ponytail, and her face looking tired and without makeup. She stopped in the doorway, holding her bag, and looked at him. "Jack," she said quietly, her voice trembling, "I received papers from your lawyer. Do you? Do you really want this?" He stood with his arms crossed, his gaze cold. "Yes, Emma," he said. "I want a divorce. I told you this clearly." Her eyes filled with tears, and she stepped closer. "Jack, please," she began, her voice breaking. "I know what I did. I was stupid, selfish, but I don't want to lose you. We can go to a therapist. We can start over. I swear I will never." "Enough," he interrupted, his voice firm. "You said this before. You promised that it meant nothing and that you would come back. But you left, Emma. You chose him. And I can't live with this." She shook her head, her tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't choose him," she said. "It was a mistake. I thought I wanted something new, but I want you, Jack. I love you." "Love doesn't go on dates with others," he said. His voice was cold, but everything inside hurt. "Love does not lie, does not betray. You ruined everything, Emma, and I can't fix it." She sank onto the sofa, covering her face with her hands. "Are you really going to give me the house? A car?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why? Do you want to just erase me?" "I want to move on," he said, looking at her. "This house, this car, they are full of you. I don't want them. I want to start again, without any trace of you." Emma looked up. Her eyes were red. "Jack, please," she whispered. "Give me a chance. I'll do whatever you say." He shook his head, feeling his resolve turn steely. "You have already made your choice," he said, "and now I'm making my own. Sign paper, Emma. Don't make it drag on." She was silent, her shoulders trembling. Then she stood up, took her bag, and headed towards the door. "I won't sign," she said quietly. "Not right away. I still hope that you will change your mind." The door closed behind her, and Jack was left alone. He felt empty, but did not doubt his decision. Emma could hope, but to him their marriage was dead. Jack Wilson sat in a small cafe on the Portland waterfront, watching the rain patter on the windows. Across from him, Leela Morgan stirred her latte, her blonde hair pulled back into a loose bun and a thoughtful look in her blue eyes. They had met here after work to just chat, as Leela had said, but Jack had a feeling their conversation would be different. In recent weeks, their relationship, which began as light flirting and grew into informal meetings, began to fade. Her energy, her laughter still attracted him, but he felt that their paths diverged, like roads in different directions. Their relationship was vibrant but superficial, just as she promised. Bars, galleries, evenings at her house, all this helped Jack survive the pain of Emma's betrayal and feel alive. But the more often they met, the clearer it became that Leela lived for freedom, and he, despite the chaos of the divorce, longed for stability. Her dreams of traveling around Asia, of living without obligations, were alien to him. He wanted roots, and she wanted wings. Leela put down her cup and looked at him. Her smile was soft, but slightly tense. "Jack," she began, her voice quieter than usual. "I was thinking, Maybe we should talk about what's going on between us. Jack nodded, feeling his stomach tighten. He knew where she was going with this. Yes, he said, trying to sound calm. I thought about this too. She leaned closer, her fingers nervously fiddling with the napkin. Listen, you're great. Is it true? These weeks have been fun. You made me laugh, and it's worth a lot. But I feel like well, not on the same page. He looked at her, her words were honest, and he appreciated that. I understand, he said, his voice level. You want to fly, but I probably want to stand still. At least for now. Leela smiled, but there was a shadow of sadness in her smile. Exactly. I keep thinking about a trip to Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, maybe India. I just want to rush, without plans, without attachments. And you're different, Jack. You need something real, something deep. And that's okay, but I can't give it to you. Jack took a sip of his coffee. The taste was bitter but soothing. He wasn't offended by her, she was honest from the very beginning. When they started dating, she made it clear that she wasn't looking for anything serious, and he agreed because his heart was still bleeding after Emma. But now, months later, he began to realize that he wanted more. Not with Leela, but in principle. He wanted a connection that meant something and didn't just fill a void. You're right, he said finally, looking into her eyes. I don't know what I want, but yes, I need something more. And I don't want to hold you, Leela. You must fly. She nodded, her gaze warm. Thank you for understanding, she said. I was afraid that you would be angry or, I don't know, offended. But you're not like that. Take offense. He chuckled, but his smile was soft. Leela, you pulled me out of a dark hole. These bars, galleries, your stupid jokes, they helped me not to go crazy. I'm grateful. Her eyes sparkled, and she reached out, squeezing his hand. You were fine too, Wilson, she said, her voice playful but sincere. And I don't want us to become strangers. Can we remain friends, without awkwardness? Jack looked at her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch. Friends. It sounded right. He didn't want to lose her completely, her energy, her humor were too valuable. Friends, he said, nodding. But only if you don't make me drink tequila. She laughed, and her laughter was so familiar, so light. No tequila, I promise, she said, letting go of his hand. But I'll still drag you out to some gallery. You haven't seen the best of Portland yet. Agreed, he replied, feeling the tension go away. The conversation was easier than he expected, which brought him relief. They finished their coffee, chatting about her travel plans and work, and parted with a light hug at the entrance to the cafe. In the evening, Jack returned to his house, which now seemed even more empty. Emma was still living with Sarah, but her lawyer contacted Mark, saying that she agreed to sign the papers, albeit reluctantly. The divorce was moving forward, and Jack felt a mixture of relief and sadness. He left her the house and car, just as he wanted, in order to finally break ties with the past. But even this could not completely erase the pain. He sat in the living room, holding a bottle of beer, and thought about Leela. Their connection was like a bright but short fireworks display, beautiful, but not forever. She helped him through the worst weeks, gave him back the feeling that he could laugh, feel live. But now that their fun was over, Jack realized he was looking for something more. Not just sparks, but fire, a connection that would be deep, real, like the one he once had with Emma before her betrayal. He remembered his evenings with Leela, her travel stories, her dreams of freedom. She was happy in her own world, and he respected that. But his world was different. He wanted stability, roots, a person who would share not only moments with him, but also life. The divorce from Emma was not yet finalized, but Jackie started thinking about the future. Not about new love, he wasn't ready, but about who he wanted to be when the pain subsided. He took out his phone and wrote a short message to Leela. Thank you for everything. If you're in Asia, send me photos. She answered almost immediately, definitely, and don't stay in the office, Wilson. Live. Jack Wilson stood in the middle of his new apartment in downtown Portland, surrounded by boxes that had yet to be sorted. The city was noisy outside the window. car horns, snatches of conversations from passers-by, the distant rumble of a tram. The apartment was small, one bedroom, a compact kitchen and living room overlooking the brick wall of the neighboring building, but for Jack it was a symbol of a new beginning. He left Emma their house in the suburbs, along with the car and all the memories it held. The divorce was not yet finalized, but the papers were moving forward, and Jack felt that with each step he was freeing himself from the past, although the pain still smoldered in his chest. The move happened quickly. After meeting with the lawyer and breaking up with Leela, Jack realized that he could no longer live in a house where every corner reminded him of Emma. He found this apartment through a colleague, signed a lease, and in 2 days moved his belongings, clothes, books, a laptop, and a few personal items. He left the rest, not wanting to cling to the old. Now, standing in the empty living room, he felt a strange mixture of freedom and uncertainty. This was his home, his space, but he did not yet know how to make it his own. Jack opened the box of books and began arranging them on the shelf. Moby Dick, The Great Gatsby, a couple of financial reference books, his modest collection, which always followed him. He stopped, holding an old framed photo of him and Emma at Lake Tahoe, laughing, hugging against the backdrop of snow-capped mountains. His finger hovered over her smile, and for a second he felt a pang of longing. But then he put the photo in a box, hiding it in the closet. This was not his life anymore. He stepped out onto the small balcony, breathing in the cool November air. Portland was alive, pulsating, and Jack knew the city was a new beginning for him. In the suburbs, he was Emma's husband, part of their shared life. Here he was just Jack, a 42-year-old man trying to figure out who he wanted to be. In the following weeks, Jack began to rethink his life. Work was still his anchor, but he decided that he would not let it become his only meaning. He signed up for a local walking group, which he found through an ad in a coffee shop. The first foray was into the Columbia Gorge, and Jack, wearing old hiking boots, joined a group of strangers. The path wound along the waterfalls, the air was fresh, and the sound of the water drowned out his thoughts. He walked in silence, listening to the chatter of the other participants, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was part of something bigger than his pain. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a man nearby, about his age, with a beard and a backpack. "I'm Brian. First time here?" Jack nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Yeah, Jack. I decided to try something new." "Good choice," Brian replied, smiling. "These trails are the best way to turn off your head. If you walk, you will see even cooler places." "I plan," Jack said, and his voice was sincere. The hike was tiring, but by the end of the day he felt a lightness that he hadn't felt in months. Maybe it was nature, maybe it was the company, but he realized he wanted to continue. Besides hiking, Jack decided to try new hobbies. He signed up for a ceramics course at a local studio, inspired by Leela's stories of her love of creating. The first lesson was awkward. His hands didn't obey him. The clay was falling apart, but the instructor, an elderly woman with a kind smile, assured him that this was normal. "No one makes a masterpiece the first time," she said, straightening his clay bowl. "The main thing is to have fun." Jack nodded, feeling her words sink in. Pleasure. When was the last time he did something just for the joy of it? He remembered evenings with Leela, their laughter in bars, her vivid stories. Their relationship ended, but it left a mark. It reminded him that life can be easy if you allow yourself to. One evening, after returning from a hike, Jack was sitting in his apartment, holding a mug of tea in his hands. He turned on jazz, an old Miles Davis album he found in a box, and looked out the window, where the city lights twinkled like stars. For the first time in a long time, he felt free. Freedom from Emma, from their home, from the pain that had held him in its grip for so long. He was alone, but this loneliness was not heavy, but open. He could be anyone, do anything. This thought was frightening, but also inspiring. However, loneliness still made itself felt. The evenings when he returned to an empty apartment were the most difficult. He missed the feeling of closeness, not just with Emma, but with someone who understood him. Leela was beautiful, but their connection was like fireworks, bright but fleeting. Now that he was starting to find himself, he realized he wanted something more. Not now, not right away, but someday. He took out his phone and texted Leela. "How are you? Already in Asia?" She replied an hour later. "Still in Portland, buy tickets for January. How are you? Didn't stay too long in the office?" Jack smiled as he typed a response. "Trying hiking and ceramics. Not quite tequila, but you can live." Her response came with a laughing face emoji. "Proud of you, Wilson. Continue." Talking to Leela reminded him how far he had come. He was no longer the broken man who sat in the living room clutching a mug of coffee while Emma went out on a date. He was Jack, a man learning to live again. But in the silence of the apartment, to the sounds of jazz, he felt that loneliness was not the end, but part of the journey, and he was ready to move on. Jack Wilson pushed open the door of Reed's Café on a busy street in downtown Portland and was immediately greeted by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm dough. The December cold remained behind the threshold, but inside it was cozy. Wooden tables, soft light from lamps, walls decorated with local paintings. Jack came here by chance, returning from work, looking for a place to warm up and have something to eat. His new apartment was only a few blocks away, and he decided that a cup of coffee and a piece of pie would be a good way to end the day. He took a seat by the window, throwing his coat over the back of a chair, and began flipping through the menu. The cafe was small but full of life. Students chatted at the tables, a couple in the corner shared dessert, and the barista behind the counter hummed to the radio. Jack noticed that the menu boasted famous apple pie and decided to give it a try. When the waitress arrived, he ordered coffee and a piece of pie, and then returned to his thoughts. The divorce from Emma was coming to an end. She signed the papers, albeit reluctantly, and their marriage of 15 years would soon officially end. Jack felt relieved, but also empty. His hikes, ceramics, and new apartment helped him move forward, but loneliness still made itself felt, especially on such evenings when the city outside the window seemed alien. His thoughts were interrupted by a woman placing a plate of pie and a cup of coffee in front of him. She was in her early 30s, with dark brown hair pulled back into a low bun and warm brown eyes. Her smile was genuine, and she was wearing a dark green apron with the cafe's name embroidered on it. "Your order," she said, her voice soft but confident. "I hope you like the pie. This is our signature." Jack looked at the pie golden crust, apple slices, a light aroma of cinnamon, and smiled. "It looks amazing," he said. "If it tastes as good as it smells, I'll become your regular customer." She laughed, and her laughter was warm, like the light in a cafe. "This is a deal. I'm Caitlyn, by the way, the owner of this place. If the cake doesn't live up to your expectations, tell me, and I'll figure out how to make it up to you." "Jack," he introduced himself, holding out his hand. "And I keep your word." She shook his hand. Her palm was warm and slightly rough, like that of a person who works a lot with her hands. "Bon appetit, Jack," she said and went behind the counter, but her smile remained with him. Jack tried the pie, and it was as good as promised. Crispy pastry, sweet apples, perfect balance of spices. He ate slowly, enjoying the taste and atmosphere of the cafe. Caitlyn appeared from time to time, chatting with other guests, checking orders, and Jack couldn't help but keep an eye on her. She moved with ease, but there was something solid, grounding in her manner. She was not like Leela with her sparkles and freedom, but there was a warmth in her that Jack felt immediately. As he finished his coffee, Caitlyn approached again, noticing his empty plate. "Well, what's the verdict?" she asked, crossing her arms and smiling. "Are we up for the title of best pie in Portland?" "No chance of losing," Jack replied, leaning back in his chair. "This is the best apple pie I've ever tasted. Is there a secret ingredient, or is it just magic?" She grinned, her eyes sparkling. "Magic, of course. But seriously, this is my grandmother's recipe. I just added a little more cinnamon and love." "Love is the key," Jack said, his tone light but sincere. "You can feel it right away." Caitlyn looked at him more carefully. Her smile became softer. "You're right," she said. "Without this, nothing comes of it. Do you come here often? I don't remember you among the regulars. First time, Jack admitted. I just recently moved to the center. I'm looking for places where I can feel. Well, at home, I guess. She nodded, and understanding flashed in her gaze. Moving is always a new chapter, right? I moved here myself a couple of years ago after. Everything. This cafe became my way to start again. Jack felt her words resonate with him. Anything? He asked, his tone cautious but curious. If it's not a secret, of course. Caitlyn shrugged, but her gaze became more serious. It's okay. Divorce, change of city, all that. I decided that if life turns upside down, it is better to take the steering wheel into my own hands. I discovered this place, and here I am. Jack froze, her words hitting home. Divorce. She had gone through the same thing as him, and her calm, her confidence that she could start again, was like a beacon. I understand, he said quietly. I am also in the process of divorce. Not the easiest thing. Her eyes softened, and she sat down opposite him, as if sensing that the conversation had become personal. Yes, it's like a storm, she said. Everything falls apart, and you think you'll never get out. But then you start to see the light. Slowly, but it is there. Jack nodded, feeling her words sink in. You seem to have found your light, he said, pointing to the cafe. This place, it's real. Thank you, she replied, her smile warm. It saved me. And you? What are you holding on to? He thought, looking at his empty cup. Work, hiking, some ceramics, he said with a slight grin. I'm trying to understand who I am without everything that happened. Caitlyn nodded, her gaze knowing. This is a good start. Hiking is awesome. I love the trails in the Columbia Gorge myself. What about ceramics? I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it myself, Jack admitted, smiling. But fiddling with clay, it's somehow calming. Although my bowls are still more like ashtrays. She laughed, and her laughter was sincere, contagious. I'll have to see these ashtrays, she said. Maybe I'll put them in the cafe for ambience. Only if you want to scare away customers, he replied, and their eyes met, lingering a little longer than necessary. The conversation flowed easily, moving from pies to Portland, from hikes to stories about life. Caitlyn told how she opened a cafe after her divorce, investing all her savings and learning to bake from scratch. Jack shared how he moved downtown while trying to find himself after the collapse of his marriage. He didn't go into detail about Emma, but Caitlyn seemed to understand his pain without words. Her own divorce, her struggle for a new life, made her not just an interlocutor, but a person who saw the same shadows. You know, she said when the cafe began to empty, divorce is like losing a part of yourself. But then you find a new one. Not right away, but you find it. Jack looked at her, feeling her words touch something deep. Have you found yours yet? He asked quietly. I think so, she answered, her voice soft. This is the cafe, my people, my mornings when I bake. And you're on your way, Jack. I see it. He smiled, and his smile was sincere for the first time in a long time. Thank you, Caitlyn, he said. This means a lot. She stood up, straightening her apron. Come again, she said, her eyes sparkling. The pie will always be waiting, and maybe I'll tell you a couple more secrets. Agreed, he answered, feeling warmth in his chest. He left a generous tip and went out into the cold evening, but for the first time in months, the cold did not penetrate inside. Jack Wilson walked along a snowy trail in Mount Tabor Park, his boots crunching on the fresh snow. Caitlyn Reed walked nearby, her dark brown hair spilling out from under her knitted hat and her cheeks pink from the December frost. They met in the morning, deciding to take a walk instead of the usual coffee at her Reed's Café. Since Jack's first visit 2 weeks ago, their conversations had become regular. He'd stop by for a pie, stay to chat, and gradually their meetings spilled over into the cafe. Today's walk was their first outside the city, and Jack felt something come to life within him. Caitlyn paused, looking at the city below. Portland sparkled in the winter sun, haze rising from the rooftops. Beautiful, isn't it? She said, her voice soft. I love this place in winter. Everything seems so clean. Jack nodded, breathing in the cold air. Yes, he said. It's like the world is starting from scratch. She looked at him. Her brown eyes were warm, understanding. That's a good way to describe it, she said. Sometimes you wish it were like this in life. I pressed the button, and everything was a blank slate. He smiled. Her words touched something in him. I'm working on it, he said, his tone light but sincere. Moving, hiking, your pies, it's all like a new leaf. Caitlyn laughed, her laugh as warm as the light in her cafe. My pies, well, it's a great honor. Maybe I'll start advertising them as pies for a new life. Sounds like a hit, Jack replied, and their eyes met, lingering a little longer than usual. He felt a warmth in his chest, not as bright as with Leela, but deep, steady. Caitlyn was different, not a spark, but a flame that warms without burning. Over the past weeks, they spent more and more time together. Jack became a regular at Reed's, stopping in after work for coffee and apple pie. Caitlyn often joined him when the cafe emptied, and their conversations flowed from recipes to books, from life in Portland to personal stories. They discovered that they both loved classic literature. Jack reread The Great Gatsby, and Caitlyn adored Jane Austen. One day she brought him a tattered copy of Pride and Prejudice, jokingly declaring that he must read it. This is not just romance, she said, her eyes sparkling. This is about people who learn to see each other. I think you'll like it. Jack took the book, feeling the warmth of her gesture. Okay, but only if you read Gatsby, he replied. Deal. Deal, she agreed, and her smile was like a promise. Their walks have become another tradition. They walked through the parks, the embankment, and sometimes climbed the hills, admiring the views. Caitlyn talked about her cafe, about how after her divorce she invested everything in this business to find herself. Jack shared stories about his hikes, about ceramics, about how he was trying to build a new life after the collapse of his marriage. He didn't go into detail about Emma, but Caitlyn, having gone through a divorce herself, understood him without words. Her own story, breaking up with a husband who didn't share her dreams, moving to Portland, opening a cafe, made her more than just a companion, but someone who saw the same scars. One day, sitting in a cafe after closing, they talked about the past. Caitlyn stirred her tea, her gaze thoughtful. You know, after the divorce, I thought I would never want to trust again, she said. It's like getting burned and being afraid to approach the fire. But then I realized that you can't live by closing yourself off. You just have to be careful. Jack nodded, her words echoing within him. I'm still in the afraid of fire phase, he admitted. Emma, she destroyed everything I believed in, and I don't know how to open the door again. Caitlyn looked at him, her gaze soft but firm. You're already opening it, Jack, she said. You're here, talking to me, going on hikes, making your crooked bowls. These are the steps, small but important. He smiled, feeling her words lift some of the weight off his shoulders. Crooked bowls, you say, he said, his tone joking. By the way, they are almost masterpieces. Show me and I'll decide, she replied with a wink. But seriously, Jack, you are stronger than you think. I see it. Her faith in him was like a beacon, and Jack felt like, for the first time in a long time, someone truly understood him. He doesn't just listen, but sees his pain, his efforts, his desire to move forward. It was a new, frightening, but incredibly alive feeling. Today, on the Mount Tabor Trail, their conversation became even closer. They stopped at a bench, and Caitlyn pulled out a thermos of hot chocolate, handing him the mug. My secret recipe, she said. Drink before it gets cold. Jack took a sip, feeling the warmth spreading through his body. You sure know how to make a day better, he said, looking at her. Café, pies, now this. Are you always like this? She shrugged, her smile a little shy. Only for those I like, she answered, and her tone was light, but there was a flicker of sincerity in it. Jack felt his heart beat faster. He looked at her cheeks pink from the cold, at her warm eyes, and realized that this was more than friendship. He felt a pull towards her, not as strong as with Leela, but deep, thorough. Caitlyn was someone with whom he could talk for hours, with whom he could remain silent without feeling awkward. She understood his pain because she had gone through her own, and that made their connection special. Caitlyn, he began, his voice quieter. I'm glad I met you. You, you make everything easier. She looked at him, her gaze soft but attentive. I'm glad too, Jack, she said. You make me remember that life is not all work and pies. These are also people, good people. Their eyes met, and for a second the world around them, the snow, the trees, the city below disappeared. Jack felt the urge to lean over and kiss her, but something stopped him. Not fear, but caution. He wanted this, he wanted her, but the memory of Emma, of her betrayal, still held him. Trusting again was like stepping into an abyss. Caitlyn, as if sensing his hesitation, smiled and looked away. Shall we go further? Pishi suggested. There is an observation deck higher up. The view is gorgeous. Let's go, he replied, grateful for her tact. They continued their walk, chatting about books and plans for the winter, but the moment stayed with him. He realized that he was ready for a new relationship, not for flirting, like with Leela, but for something real. Caitlyn was the person he could build this with, but the fear of trusting again, of opening up again, still hung over him like a shadow. In the evening, returning to his apartment, Jack sat down with a book, the same Pride and Prejudice, that Caitlyn had given him. He read, but his thoughts returned to her. Her smile, her words, her understanding, it was all like a bridge over the abyss that Emma had left. He felt that for the first time in a long time he was truly understood, truly seen. And it scared him because it meant he had to make a choice. Stay in the safety of solitude or risk it again. He closed the book and looked out the window where snow was falling on the streets of Portland. Caitlyn wasn't just a woman he liked. She was a chance for a new life. And although fear still whispered to him that trust could lead to pain, Jack realized that he wanted to try. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. Because with Caitlyn he felt not just alive, but at home. Jack Wilson stood on the bank of the Columbia River, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth, and the cool December wind ruffled his hair. The river sparkled under the setting sun, reflecting orange and pink highlights, while the snow-capped peaks of the Cascade Mountains rose in the distance. Caitlyn Reed walked next to him, her hand in his, and her dark brown hair spilling out from under a knitted hat. This wasn't the first time they'd walked here. This place had become a tradition over the years of their relationship, but today Jack felt his heart beating faster. There was a small box in his jacket pocket, and he knew that this evening would change their lives. A year ago, when he first walked into her Reed's Café, he could not imagine that he would find not just solace, but true love. Caitlyn, with her warm smile and knowing brown eyes, became his beacon. Their relationship grew slowly but firmly, walks in parks, evenings reading books, talking about the past and dreams. She had gone through a divorce, just like him, and her strength, her ability to rebuild her life, inspired Jack. With her, he felt not only understood, but at home. They stopped at a wooden fence, looking out over the river. Caitlyn pressed herself against him, her cheeks pink from the cold. I will never get tired of this view, she said, her voice soft. It's so calm here. Jack nodded, feeling the box in his pocket getting heavier. Yes, he said, his voice slightly hoarse. This place, it's special. How are you? She turned to him, her eyes sparkling with surprise and warmth. Oh, is that a compliment? She teased, her smile playful. You're in a mood today, Wilson. He smiled, but his heart was racing. He knew the moment had come. He took her hands, feeling the warmth of her palms even through his gloves. Caitlyn, he began, looking into her eyes. This year with you, it changed everything. You made me believe again that life can be good. Not just survival, but happiness. Her smile softened, and she squeezed his hands. Jack, she said quietly, you did this for me too. You're like my best pie. Perfect balance. He laughed, her joke relieving some of the tension. But then he became more serious, his voice trembling with emotion. I'm serious, he said. You gave me a home, Caitlyn. Not just a place, but a feeling. and I want it to be forever." He got down on one knee, taking out a box. Caitlyn gasped, her eyes widening, but she didn't look away. He opened the box to reveal a simple ring with a small diamond, modest but elegant, just like her. "Caitlyn Reed," he said, his voice firm despite his emotion. "Will you marry me?" Her hands pressed to her chest and tears sparkled in her eyes. She nodded, her voice breaking. "Yes, Jack," she said. "Yes, of course, I will marry you." He stood up, placing the ring on her finger, and pulled her into his arms. They stood there, hugging, while the river flowed nearby and the sun set below the horizon. Caitlyn pulled away, her eyes shining. "You chose the perfect place," she whispered, touching his cheek. "I love you." "I love you too," he answered, and his words were like an oath. They kissed, and Jack felt that for the first time in years his heart was full not of pain, not of fear, but of joy. The wedding preparations were as simple as they both wanted. They decided to have a modest ceremony in a local park, surrounded by pine trees, surrounded by friends and family. Caitlyn chose a cream-colored dress, light and elegant, and Jack wore a dark blue suit that she helped choose. Their friends from the cafe and the hiking group, as well as Leela, who had flown in from Thailand for a couple of days, gathered to celebrate. Leela hugged Jack. Her smile was sincere. "You look happy, Wilson," she said with a wink. "She's amazing. Don't ruin it." "I don't plan to," he answered, laughing. "Thank you for coming." The ceremony was short but touching. They exchanged vows in the open air, and Jack, looking into Caitlyn's eyes, promised to love her, respect her, and be there for her, no matter what happens. Her vow was just as simple but profound, and when they kissed, the guests applauded and some even whistled. After the ceremony, they held a reception at Reed's, where Caitlyn baked her own wedding cake layered with vanilla buttercream and berries. The guests drank wine, danced to live music, and Jack, holding Caitlyn's hand, felt that everything was in its place. Emma, the divorce, the pain, it was all in the past. Caitlyn was his present, his future. Caitlyn inspired Jack to new achievements. Her energy, her passion for life was contagious. A few months after their wedding, they decided to expand her business by opening a second Reed's location in another area of Portland. Jack used his experience as a financial analyst to help create a business plan, find investors, and optimize the budget. Caitlyn brought her warmth to the project. She developed a new menu, adding seasonal desserts, and personally trained the chefs. "Are you sure you want to spend so much time on this?" she asked one day as they sat in her office, surrounded by drawings and samples of interior fabrics. "This is my project, and you're already doing too much." Jack took her hand, looking into her eyes. "This is our project," he said. "You inspire me, Caitlyn. I want to build this with you." She smiled, her eyes sparkling. "Okay, partner," she said, leaning down to kiss him. "Then hold on. We will make this place the best in the city." Their work together strengthened their bond. Jack, who was once afraid to trust again, now felt like part of a team not only in business, but in life. Caitlyn was not just his wife, but his equal, his support. They argued, laughed, and sometimes got tired, but every evening they returned home together, knowing that their love was a foundation that would not collapse. By the end of the year, a second branch of Reed's opened and was a success beyond expectations. The cafe became popular with locals, and reviews on social media praised not only the food, but also the atmosphere Caitlyn created. Jack looked at her standing behind the counter of the new establishment and felt proud. She was his home, his light, and he knew that with her his life would be complete. Their wedding, their business, their love, it was all a new beginning. Jack no longer looked back. Emma, her betrayal, their broken marriage remained somewhere far away, like shadows that could no longer touch him. With Caitlyn, he found what he was looking for, not just happiness, but a life worth living. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.